So good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Geneva. Our church is part of a living tradition. We are bound by our common history, our affirmation of the great spiritual quest for truth and meaning, and by the promises that we make to one another about the spiritual values we uphold. We have no creed. We have no tests of faith. Your questions and your doubts are welcome here. Wherever you are on your journey, we invite you to be part of this congregation in which we draw wisdom from all the world's religions and balance them with the insights of modern science. Here we seek to build a diverse, beloved community, and it is our great hope to inspire each other, to challenge each other, and to accompany one another as together we act for hope, peace, love, and justice in our own lives and in our larger world. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Sveta Ketu. His father, who was a very wise man, sent Sveta Ketu off to school to learn to be a Brahmin, a teacher and scholar of wisdom. After 12 years of school, the boy came home, full of knowledge and no little pride. His father, who found this amusing, asked his son, "Son, you seem to know everything now, but I have to ask, did you get the teaching that reveals how we can hear what is not heard, perceive what cannot be perceived, and know what cannot be known?" The boy, confused and more than a little annoyed, nevertheless swallowed his pride and managed to say humbly, "Father, will you teach it to me?" The father smiled and said, "Bring a fig from over there." And the boy did so. And the father said, "Now divide it." And the boy did so. The father said, "What do you see there, son?" And the boy said, "Small seeds, sir." The father said, "Divide one." And the boy did so. And then the father said, "And now what do you see?" And the boy said, "Nothing, sir." And then the father said, "That, the finest essence, that you can't even see after breaking it, it is because of that that this huge fig tree stands here. Believe me, my son, that finest essence, that is the self, the soul, the truth of this whole world. And that is what you are, Sveta Ketu." The boy seemed perplexed. So the father thought a moment, then handed his son a hunk of salt. "Put this in a cup of water and bring the cup to me tomorrow morning." And the boy did so. The next morning, the father said, "You put the salt into the water, please reach in and take it out." The boy put his fingers into the water and felt around for the salt, but of course, the chunk of salt was gone. He said, "Father, I cannot remove the salt because it has dissolved into the water." The father said, "Put your finger into the surface of the water and taste it." The boy did so and said, "It tastes salty." The father said, "Put your finger into the middle of the water and taste it." The boy did so and said, "It tastes salty." The father said, "Put your finger all the way to the bottom of the water and taste it." The boy did so and said, "It tastes salty." And then the father said, "You are unable to see or feel the essence of the salt, and although you know that the essence of the salt is everywhere in the water." Believe me, my son, that finest essence, that is the self, the soul, the truth of this whole world. And that is what you are, Sveta Ketu. This is an excellent time in our service to do our thing. So I'm going to ask our tech team to invite our remote guests back into the sanctuary. And again, I'm going to ask you to turn your cameras on, if just only for a moment. And in the spirit of our friend, the Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III of Trinity Church here in Chicago, I want you now, wherever you might be, to turn to a neighbor. Any neighbor. I'm looking right at you. Now, through your masks and using your indoor voices, repeat after me. Neighbor.
Neighbor.
Oh, neighbor.
Oh, neighbor.
There are no others.
There are no others.
Excellent. Well done. Well done. So this morning, I want to talk a little bit about Hindu mysticism. Many of you are more familiar with Hinduism than I am, so you'll know that while Hinduism is very old, it is still exotic and other and alien for most Westerners. And you'll also know that despite that, Hindu ideas and philosophy and mysticism have been in the Western ocean of religious experience for exactly as long as there has been a Western ocean of religious experience. You know that Hindu ideas crop up in the writings of Greek philosophers like Plotinus, and Christian mystics like Meister Eckhart and St. John of the Cross, though you may wonder if that's an accident of serendipity or maybe something more. You also know that Hindu texts and ideas litter the history of Unitarian Universalism, in part because of the Transcendentalists, who were among the first to acquire, translate, and then publish Eastern religious texts for their fascinated American readers. And you'll know that Hindu texts and Hindu ideas informed activists like Thomas Merton, popular writers like Eckhart Tolle, and thinkers like Ken Wilber. And they are also the central themes in blockbuster movies like Star Wars and The Matrix. When I think about Hinduism, I tend to think of sweeping metaphysical ideas, telling stories, revealing truths about the nature of existence. Ideas like reincarnation, the transmigration of the soul. As we heard earlier in the story of the egg, which I like to think of as a sort of Hindu parable, life is an endless cycle of birth and death and rebirth. And there's a point to all of that. Karma. The idea that my actions in this life have consequences in the next one. And I understand that this cycle is not pleasant because for so many, for most of human history, life is full of suffering. And lastly, I understand that to live a good life, or perhaps the best possible life, we have the power to end suffering permanently by jumping off the wheel of rebirth through practices that produce enlightenment. This morning, I want to talk about that last bit. I want to talk about a particular insight, one captured by the story of Sveta Ketu. This insight, I believe, stands at the heart of three major Eastern religious traditions. One is Hindu. It's called the school is called the Advaita Vedanta, and it's the one that lifts up our friend Sveta Ketu. But there's another tradition, one familiar to many of you, Taoism. where we are invited to explore the riddles of the mysterious poems of the Tao Te Ching. There's another, Zen Buddhism, a path I understand that some of you here today follow. This morning, I want to suggest that all three traditions are trying to unravel a single mystery, the mystery of non-dualism. What is non-dualism? I'm so glad you asked. Yay! It's probably best to start with the idea that the real world is not the world that we see around us. That's an illusion, created out of our habits of distinctions and divisions and separations. This from that. This is not that. This is different from that. This is good and healthy and productive and beautiful. That is bad and poisonous, a waste of time and ugly. Dualisms. Everywhere we look, dualisms. It's what we humans do by reflex, but it's not real. In order to see beyond dualism, if we want to experience the truth, we're going to have to abandon our cognitive habits, our concepts, our manipulation of symbols, because these are the things that are precisely the barriers that keep us from experiencing the world as it really is. Paraphrasing Morpheus from the 1999 film The Matrix, if we want to know the truth, we have to free our minds. And when we do, we can do it. We can experience reality as it really is. And it is exactly these experiences that Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism all call enlightenment. It is these experiences that all three traditions believe brings liberation, an end to suffering, an end to the endless death and rebirth, a door into the ultimate, a transformative experience of transcendence and wonder. Saying that is one thing, doing it is another. It's also a little harder. But for those that are interested in the doing, there are a few paths to choose from. Of course, we could all hope for the gift of sudden insight, Shazam, right? But most seekers tend to call their approach a practice for a reason. The most common practices, yoga, meditation. For now, I'm going to remain agnostic about psychedelics and say that Michael Pollan's 2018 book, How to Change Your Mind, well, it's on my bookshelf. That's a future sermon. So as I'm going to turn now towards the close, I want to turn to one of these traditions and their explanations of enlightenment. And to do that, I want to introduce you to Venkataraman Iyer, who was born in northern India in 1879. Some of you may recognize the name he came to be known by, Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. Anybody ever heard that name, Ramana Maharshi? Excellent. Ramana Maharshi was a recluse, a hermit, and it was only through the annoying persistence of certain students that he agreed to become a teacher. And he became a teacher in the Advaita Vedanta tradition, one of the 6 great schools of Hindu thought. For those keeping track, Advaita, the word Advaita, literally means non-dualist. Is a negation, Dvaita is dualism, so not dualism. Now, Ramana Maharshi died in 1950, and all we have of his teachings are transcripts of question and answer exchanges captured by his students. And there are hundreds of pages of such exchanges. But once upon a time, a student asked him this. The student asked him, "How are we to treat others?" To which the master replied, "There are no others." There are no others. I believe that what Ramana Maharshi says here also is the heart of the Svetaketu story. So let me try and link them now. In Hinduism, the word for self, that's the deepest part of us, right? The most personal, most important, most transcendent, right? That part is the soul. Me, my soul. I am my soul. The Hindu word here is Atman. Atman is what survives death, what is transmigrated, what is endlessly reincarnated. By contrast, Brahman is the ground of being, the ultimate reality, the source and purpose and goal of all knowledge. Brahman surrounds us, penetrates us, binds our universe together. It's like the force. It's the soul of the world. It's God, for lack of a better word. Two things, separate, dualism, right? On the one hand, my soul, on the other, the world soul, myself, God. In the story I read above, the father says to Svetaketu, that is what you are. That, Atman, is that Brahman. Atman is Brahman. Not two things, one thing. Ramana Maharshi comes at this a different way. There are no others, no other beings out there at all. Much like the story of the egg, everyone that we ever meet is not different, not separate, not other at all. Instead, everyone that you ever meet is you. And so, every time you victimized someone, you were victimizing yourself. Every act of kindness you've done to yourself. Every happy and sad moment ever experienced by any human ever was or will be experienced by you. And this is the truth, the ultimate truth, the secret truth that finally releases us from the prison of eternity and frees us for whatever it is that comes next. Enlightenment, liberation. This fundamental truth that Atman is Brahman, self is God. There is no self that is not God. There is no God that is not self. There are no others. We are one. One with each other, one with all others, one with God. We are each other. We are, all of us, God. God is and has always been us. And that is what you are, Svetaketu. In my office, I have a poster. It's from the TV show, The X-Files. It's a picture of a UFO. And under it are the words, I want to believe. I love that poster. And at various points in my life, I have meant many different things by that phrase, I want to believe. I like to believe it means that I am always seeking after the truth, hungry for it. And I know that sometimes truths are hard to hear. I'll confess, the story of Svetaketu and the insights of Ramana Maharshi are hard for me to hear. Reincarnation, karma, non-duality, those are hard. But what if a story doesn't have to be true to carry truth? A truth story instead of a true story. Is non-duality true? I have no idea. But how different would the world be if we acted as if it were? And I'm reminded that just as some truths are hard to hear, others are hard to understand, hard to get our heads around, especially if it is our heads that are getting in the way. Getting out of our heads is pretty much the opposite of what UUs want to do every morning. We are the tradition that lifts up reason, tolerance, and freedom as religious truths. We are a this, not that tradition, a religion of distinctions. We are Unitarian, not Trinitarian. Our truths are universal, not just for the favored few. And yet, we hint at something more. Our seventh principle speaks of an interconnected, interdependent web of all existence, one that we are intimately and inextricably a part of, not separate, not distinct, not set apart, integral. And we call this sometimes beloved community. And this morning, thinking of holly and the wild joy that comes from brilliant color, I am reminded of our call toward abundant diversity, our bold aspirations of endless human flourishing, the more that calls us forward. Like a whisper that insists we erase the lines, bring down the barriers, put away the weapons, and reach for truths beyond words. Truths we can only hear in the laughter of children, in the tears of the broken, in the eyes of our neighbors, in the splendor of stars glittering at us like diamonds spilled across the great dark. And sometimes I wonder what it would be like if we gave up dividing and categorizing and separating. What lies on the other side of those boundaries? And what might happen if we let ourselves fall into a grand something, impossible something, that promise of transcendent wonder beyond all understanding? And sometimes I wonder if that is love. And that's my gift for you this morning, my egg. That is what you are. There are no others. Amen. We extinguish the light of this chalice, but not the flame of truth or the spirit of our community. Those go with us until we can be together again. And as we prepare to leave this place, continue your journey in love. Care for one another and care for this, our earth. Do justice and make peace. And as you go, know that whatever taste or touch you've had in this time, this place, hope, joy, love, peace, mystery, that goes with you out into the world. We are different for having spent our time together. So remember, live boldly and with thanksgiving.